Alright guys, wanted to make a tutorial today. I don't make very many tutorials, so why not? One I could think of today was, since I got a rack server, there's something I wanted to do. It's roaming profiles, setting up a domain, and there's one other thing that I forgot, but I'll get to it. So the first thing will be setting up a domain, and roaming profiles, there's not very much to it, but there's something I want to get to. And when you set up a roaming profile, and this happens in XP, 7, Vista, whatever, it copies your document folder, your pictures folder, your music, whatever. So if you have 100 gigs in your user file, it has to upload that to the server, and then every time you move to a new computer it has to re-download it. So that's where this thing called, I can't remember what it's called, but what it does is it saves that and it will appear as a network drive under here. For an example, we can do this one. And what it would do is it'd say your documents, your downloads, your desktop, your contacts, your pictures, videos, everything right where you see applications, install, mini, software. And all those folders are mapped to your real libraries and favorites and all that. So instead of having it download to the server every time, it just appears under a computer, and this is something from what I know works on 7, great. Vista, I haven't really tried it. 2003 you can't even do this. 2008 I think you can. But start out, we can start with the domain thing. I know there's videos of it, but we can just do it anyways. So just to go over the server specs real quick, we have 2008 R2 Enterprise, which is fully legal because I got it from DreamSpark. We're using an Asus motherboard with a K8 NDRE. We have dual core AMD Opteron processors, and there's 2 of these processors, so pretty much have kind of a quad core computer. We have 8 gigs of RAM. The reason it says 6.89 usable is because I have a 1 gig NVIDIA 210 graphics card in there, and it pulls it from the RAM. Wish it didn't do that, but it does. Of course, we got 64-bit, we got our 24 hours a day, got our thing, Windows is activated. But when you set up a domain on server, you have to use Active Directory. I'm not going to dig into that because I have it all set up. Maybe in the future I'll come back with a tutorial to do that, but the important thing is the domain. Get that from the server, so I have DNF network-local. And something to keep in mind with this is, let's say you did, for an example, google.com. Well, on the server you couldn't go to google.com in your web browser because it thought it had something to do with the domain. So just don't use .com and .net with real websites. They can screw them up. But to start out, I have Windows 7 Professional Virtual Machine here. So of course, I'll run over the specs of the machine real quick. I'm using my Dell Inspiron 537S only because the 6-core desktop makes a ton of heat, and if I keep my door closed to make a video, it just sucks. So it gets so warm in here, and it's summertime, so it's that much worse. But we are using, of course, Inspiron. We got a Core 2 Duo at 2.93, 4 gigs of RAM, and then 3.87 usable because the whole video thing, pulling it out of RAM, and then 64-bit operating system, are activated, all that good stuff. But this virtual machine here just has a gig of RAM, and you must have Professional for this, and if you have Vista you have to have Business, and Professional for XP. Some Media Center 2005, some installs happen to have it, some don't. But what you have to do is, under computer, where you see computer name, and I still have to activate it, I won't do that now, but click change settings. It'll take a second. Then here you want to go to, under computer name, to rename this computer, change its domain to a workgroup, click change. So domain is what you need here, and that was where we had the DNF-network. Then It's always good to use the administrator account. Then it'll take a second, and then it'll be like, it's connected. Oh, okay, perfect. Now, what this means here with the DNS name, which I completely forgot about this, is you have to have it, your DNS server, I'll go ahead and, you want to find this information out. So, using ipconfig, you see I have 0.18, but what we have to change is we have to change the DNS server to the IP address of the server, which I'll go ahead and change that here. XP, for some reason you don't have to do this, it connects fine, but just something with Windows 7. So we want IVP4, and then here you have to enter all this good stuff manually. So with ipconfig, that's what you gotta do. And IP address is server. It can go a lot more complex. You want to change the gateway with that too. And make sure your server has an internet connection, otherwise this won't get internet. So keep that in mind. So there we have it. It says welcome to the domain. So it'll go ahead and restart the computer. So go ahead and let it restart. So while it's doing that, we need to go back to the server. Now, I actually have a document here. This is something I typed up. I'll have it in the description, but where we have our user profile, that is our roaming files, where it will save, like let's say you had Firefox installed and you had bookmarks and passwords and stuff saved. Every computer you go to and use Firefox, it'll go into that app data folder and get that data, so you have all your passwords and everything, and that happens with all kinds of programs. Even with Mobitex now, it does that with themes and your document settings, stuff like that. So what we need to do is we need to open Active Directory users and computers, which I have a little icon here, it's a book, and we have our users. So for an example, I'll just use my account. I've only signed into it once, but I've never even configured this yet. So we go to Properties. Now we have to go to the profile. Now what you have to do is, for the profile path, you have to first make sure it's a folder, as how we have our user files and our roaming. You have to make sure you have both those folders there, and they have to be shared on the network so everyone can access them. Otherwise this isn't going to work. You can't use like c/roaming/Gavin. You have to have the full server thing. But what happens is when you put the %username, that'll automatically put the username there, so it saves time. If you have 100 users, you have to go through and do this. Now, home folder is what I was talking about earlier, where you have the Z and it goes to a special folder where it'd have your libraries and everything. And the libraries, we have to go configure that. So what you have to do is go to, well, you need these folders first. Without them, you're kinda screwed. But this is something you have to do with every account. I don't know how to do it all at once, but going back to the user folders or user files and then my name, you have to go ahead and paste these folders. It's going to take a minute or two because I have Minecraft stuff in the documents, which I'll delete. So our next goal is we have to remap all of our libraries folders. Go ahead and delete that stuff. Oh, oops. To your recycle bin. So, what we need to do now is we need to log into that user account, which we can go ahead and do. Actually, I don't want to log off. I'll disconnect. Now I have to open up a remote desktop again. sign in with my thing. And this is the way I found to do it. If anyone knows how to do it all at once, that would be pretty efficient. But, oh well, gotta do what you gotta do. Only do this for user accounts you really want to. Okay, so this is the same user account on the same server, the same DNF SVR thing. Close that. So what we gotta do now is what we did with the user files. You see how we have the Z drive here, and these were all the folders we made. Now we have to relink them to this. And how do we do that? Well, you need to go to the folder, you right click, go to properties, and then you see location. That's where you gotta change to. You need to get rid of all this and put Z. Oops. I'll go ahead and copy that so it makes it easier. And then yes, okay. You have to do this for every folder. Oops. And copy and replace. So this can take some time if you're doing this for 1 million users. But I'm going to go ahead and finish this up, pause the video, and get back to you when I'm all done with it. Alright, so I got all these folders linked, and you see here, I'll go ahead and open this. This is the Z drive, if I am correct, and this is my library. So I'm just going to delete the virtual machine folder, and it's gone for both of them. So I'll just drag a shortcut in here, do Notepad++, just paste, and it shows up there. So what I'm getting at here is every time you go to documents, it's there, but everything is also on your Z drive, and it's pretty much like rerouting it. So this saves the roaming profiles, so you don't even have to do anything with roaming profiles. The only thing is, when you get a roaming profiles thing, let's say you made a folder in here, named it blah blah blah, and you had 100 gigs in there, that's where the roaming files will pick all that up, but it won't pick up any of these folders that are already here. So what we can do now, we can go ahead and let's go to documents and just make some random text document. Blah 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 blah. Go in here and just spam it with the keyboard. Alright. This is an Apple wireless keyboard, by the way. So we have SGRG, the whatever. So that's a text document there. Go ahead and log off here. Now we can go back to the virtual machine. Now you have to do Control-Alt-Delete to log in and switch user. It's going to take a minute because this is the first time signing in this computer with that domain and with that user account, so it always takes a little bit of time the first time you go. So from what we can see, got our black background that was imported from there. It even imports your things down here, which I had a Firefox icon there, or sorry, Chrome, and Virtual PC. Those are showing up like that because I don't have them installed on this computer. But in our documents folder, we see we have that same blah blah blah, and then unsupported library locations. That means because it's getting off the Z drive. That's what that means. But nothing too crazy. Go back in here and say we have this as our wallpaper. So we set it as the desktop background. Another thing I just wanted to mention real quick since I saw it is the start menu. And to see here how we have Gavin, documents, pictures, music, blah 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 blah. That's how it should be in Windows 7, but since this is how it was in 2008, it carried it over to Windows 7. So, but we have the wallpaper set. Go ahead and just leave it at fill so it doesn't stretch and look all ugly. Much better. So, since we saved that, we can go ahead and actually go ahead and log off. And this should take a second because it has to upload this to the app data folder and then copy it over to the server. Alright, so it saved all the stuff to the server. We can go ahead and minimize that. Go back to the remote desktop. Should sign in here. And that's another thing I meant to notice or say is because I had Aereo in VirtualBox, it was kind of weird because sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Carried that over to here and I get Aereo in the server. But one thing that didn't happen was the wallpaper. I don't know why it didn't, but oh well. I think that's the only thing that doesn't carry over is wallpaper. Everything else does but that. So it's pretty cool. And another thing I want to show real quick is you can go ahead and go to documents on here, go to sign in back on here. There's two things worth mentioning here. Is if I make a file in here, it'll automatically appear in the 2008 remote desktop thing. And another thing is if you have app data and you said you added more bookmarks in this Firefox thing on the virtual machine and then added some in the remote desktop one, whatever one you log off last is what will be there. So my first example will just be in the documents. We can go ahead and do another thing. We can paint. Oops. I don't know what to say. Just do a smiley face. File, save as. I'll save this in the pictures folder as Untitled. That works. Now I can go back to, into here, go to pictures. We see it's there. It's almost like instant. So that's just something cool. That's kind of what happens with the Firefox thing. But whatever computer you're on and you're signed in, you can save files to any of these libraries and they'll appear on all computers. Another thing worth mentioning is if you have iTunes and you have all your music on your Z drive or on a server or whatever, it'll automatically save your playlist file in the app data folder. So every computer you sign in with this has your full iTunes library saying these are your songs and this is your playlist. That's another thing kind of cool. But that's pretty much it for this tutorial. Maybe there'll be more ideas at some point. So talk to you guys later.